Good morning, everyone. So we are on to the third session of the Bible and Evolution. And this session, we look at the science of evolution. Now, last week, we were looking at the primordial soup. And after exploration, this is what we can know for sure, that in 1953, Stanley Miller set out to create the building blocks of life using his spark chamber. So, he set up the closed system, and he tried to simulate the atmosphere of billions of years ago. But like I said, we actually cannot tell if it's billions of years ago, because if there was no planet, there was no sun, and the Earth revolves around the sun to create a concept of time, of days and years for us. So without sun, there cannot be billions of years. Okay, so that is not scientific actually. So he tried to simulate the atmosphere of what they call billions of years ago by combining gases such as methane and ammonia, leaving out oxygen. Then he generated electrical sparks to drive the chemical reactions. You notice he generated those. They were not spontaneous. Yeah, the textbooks say that he created amino acids, the building blocks of life. And that is a fact, kind of, but you see, it gives you the wrong impression. Okay, it gives you the wrong impression, saying that he created amino acids, the building blocks of life. We will talk about that in a moment. So come back to the gases. When he picked which gases to use in his closed system, he had to introduce the gases, you see. So he used certain gases to represent the early atmosphere. And so the question is, why did he intentionally leave out oxygen? Now, you see this poster on the primordial soup. Yeah, it states a number of things. And one of the things it says is that billions of years ago, Earth's atmosphere had no free oxygen. Right? Elements and chemicals were only in the atmosphere. But the actual truth is there was a lot of oxygen. In fact, more than today. So he left out oxygen, which is therefore an inaccurate simulation of the atmosphere. And why? Why did he leave out oxygen? Because he knew from his earlier attempts, you see, he made quite a lot of attempts. He knew from earlier attempts that life could not have started in the presence of oxygen. Oxidation prevents the molecular bonds from forming. Oxidation. And yet it has been shown that the early atmosphere had more oxygen than our atmosphere today. Okay, so let's say, however, that the early atmosphere really didn't have any oxygen. Even if there was no oxygen, also cannot, because then there would be no ozone layer, and the Earth would get directly heated up by the sun. So any life that was or could have been generated would have been fried by the sun. So you see, oxygen or no oxygen also cannot at that time. So goodbye to life, whether there was oxygen or not. Now, even if we overlook the oxygen issue, let's come back to the amino acids that Miller produced in his spark chamber. The acids were a major problem. Okay, there are basically two types of amino acids, the left-handed and the right-handed. And every amino acid in every protein in our human body, and there are trillions of these, every protein is left-handed. In fact, every living thing on Earth has only left-handed amino acids. Okay, so what Miller created was an even mixture of left-handed and right-handed amino acids. And that is poison to life. It's actually what happens when an organism dies. When an organism dies, the left-handed amino acids will convert into right-handed. So every experiment he conducted had the same result. What Miller created was death, not life. And also the mixture that he produced was 85% tar, 13% carboxylic acid, both toxic to life. It's like inhaling carbon monoxide from your car exhaust pipe. Yeah, and only 2% amino acids. So the mixture he produced would have killed any life, even if there was life. Okay, so don't even talk about the oxygen. The mixture he produced itself would kill the life. So you see, totally impossible. Totally impossible. So by the mid-1970s, Belgian biochemist Marcel Floquin had declared that the concept behind Miller's theory of the early atmosphere had been abandoned. So about 20 years later, they gave up because all these problems made it impossible for life to come out of what they call the primordial soup. So in 1995, Science magazine, so another 20 years later, said that the experts now dismiss Miller's experiment because the early atmosphere looked nothing like it did in his experiment. So what's the result? The experiment is a known and recognized failure, but it is still used as evidence in textbooks and articles that life can start on its own. So we come to the conclusion, evolution from the Miller experiment. Is it fact or fraud? You know, so people have been perpetuating this wrong thinking that primordial soup actually produced all the life that now exists in our world. And that is definitely not true. Okay, so we see that it was scientifically verified from the failure of the Miller-Urey experiments that it was impossible for life to be produced from spontaneous evolution. That means by itself, yeah, in the early Earth environment. Yet people are still circulating this inaccuracy as proven science. And not surprisingly, Romans 1, 20-21 and verse 25 tell us why. Would somebody like to read this for us?
I read from your screen.
Okay.
For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that men are without excuse. For although they knew God, they neither glorified him nor gave thanks to him, but their thinking became futile, and their foolish hearts were darkened. They exchanged the truth of God for a lie.
Thank you, Mac. Right, so since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, even though we can't see God, we can't feel God, we can't touch God, you know, his invisible qualities have been seen and understood through creation. And men are without excuse, but they actually know God, but they refuse to glorify him or acknowledge him. And of course, then their thinking became futile. So their thinking is useless and their foolish hearts were darkened. They cannot understand, they cannot appreciate God because they exchanged the truth of God for a lie that God did not create, but evolution made all life. See, and the chances of amino acids randomly forming themselves into proteins to create life are about 1 in 1,746,900 and another whole endless, almost endless rows of zeros. Okay, this is just producing proteins, okay, forming themselves into proteins. We haven't even talked about creating life from there, okay? So what happens is, as I said, people are still passing on and still using this Miller-Urey experiment as scientific fact that there was life produced spontaneously. So we see a little bit of wrong facts, or impressions created, okay? And this is from an article as recent as October 7th, 2022, this year only, yeah, just last month. And this article says research suggests that lightning or heat may have triggered the formation of amino acids from the inorganic compounds in the Earth's environment, generating primordial soup, setting the stage for the development of living organisms. You see, so this is how they say that it's still happening, that people are saying that all these life forms are created at that time. And it says research suggests, right? But from the word suggest, it will move on to actually happen. And in 1953, the publication of the famous Miller-Urey experiment, in which researchers replicated the conditions and managed to produce amino acids, generated a great deal of support for this theory. So you see, it looks like the experiment was actually successful. Yeah, and the conditions were inaccurate, but this article left it out. And the researchers found that when they sealed the components of the Earth's early atmosphere in glass flasks, heated the materials, and generated electric shocks, amino acids did indeed emerge. You see how suggests becomes all these things are facts, and they do not actually say that these were failures. Yeah, amino acids, but they cannot generate life. And so they even go on to say lightning may have triggered the formation of amino acids from the inorganic compounds in the Earth's environment, which then generated primordial soup and gave rise to life. You see how the may and then gave rise to life. You see how the lie of people who exchange the truth of God can use words to suggest this, and after the suggestion, it became a fact that there was life. That's how bad people can be, you know, or in another case, it could be ignorance. Okay, so when the Earth first formed, this is a continuation of the same article. When the Earth first formed, it did not contain any organic material. Yet here we are, billions of years later, demonstrating. You see how just now it was saying may, but now it says demonstrating that at some point inorganic material turned into organic material. This process is known as abiogenesis. That means no life, but can get life out of no life. And it would theoretically be extremely difficult. You see the word theoretically, extremely difficult, but the written like that, it makes suggestion that it was not that difficult after all. Yeah, so you see what they are doing. They're creating a lot of impressions in you or in us. And then from what is fact, and part of the fact also not accurate, you know, they lead you by the nose and tell you, okay, it became fact. So conditions on Earth in its early years were very different than they are now. And you see again the line, the atmosphere contained no oxygen. Again, all these blatant facts, blatant lies. And it was rich in things like hydrogen, ammonia, methane, and also last week we also saw methane. Actually, there was a lot less than scientists actually thought. Yeah, one of the last things that we discovered more recently. Methane was a lot less than we thought, and water. So you say atmosphere was rich in all these things. So how inaccurate and untrue they are reporting. According to the primordial soup theory, these substances were primed. You see, they are conditioned to produce amino acids. Yeah. So again, you see more and more the way they talk with certainty and conviction, using words that deceive you into words that become certain fact. Yeah, these substances were primed to produce amino acids, which would have been able to combine to create organic material, which could have eventually given rise to life. In order for this to occur, there needed to be a catalyst, amino acids. Just a minute. Amino acids did not emerge spontaneously. So now it says did not emerge spontaneously, but the substances were primed to produce amino acids. And the primordial soup theory explains how living organisms appeared on Earth. You see how this article itself is full of contradictions. Yeah, suggested and then became demonstrated and then explains how living organisms appeared on Earth. This is the same article on October 7, 2022, which is just last month, right? So the fact is the whole thing was a failure, right? The experiment to prove how life came from non-life. It was a total failure, but up to today, people are still teaching and still writing articles like it is scientific fact. So they generate a lot of wrong facts and false impressions, and they still circulate all these things. Now we see that evolutionists claim or give the impression that there is well-supported evidence that life originated spontaneously from non-organic matter. The fact is that this is totally untrue. A lot of information, as you can see, is distorted. But most people don't know it because the simple reason, scientists have discovered that people will believe anything when you claim scientists have discovered it. See how terrible people can be? Yeah, they can claim to have discovered or proven anything, and people will believe when actually it's not correct. So the world is full of lies. Now, having said that, all right, we can still make something of this primordial soup theory. Because you see, the Bible account of creation in a certain way can still be reconciled with scientists' belief. When we look at Genesis chapter 1, verse 2, it speaks of the waters, which scientists theorize as primordial soup. So there's a chance that is actually the same thing, but given a different name. One is from the Bible, which is a familiar term we use, waters. Yeah, different name. But what happened would have been a different process. So we look at Genesis 1, verse 2, verses 1 and 2. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. We are very familiar with that first verse. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. Okay, so we have two terms here referring to the waters, the surface of the deep. And Holy Spirit was hovering over the waters. So scientists call primordial soup, it could have been what the Bible refers to as the waters. Okay, but what happened with the waters is not what scientists suggest. Okay, what happened differs. Scientists believe the compounds in the water solution produce life, which Miller's experiment showed is impossible without intelligent intervention. Even to get the amino acids, he had to intervene. He had to control the gases, he had to remove the tar, he had to remove the poisonous substances. Okay, now the Bible fills in the gap. Okay, what people say without God, the Bible says with God inside. It says God's Spirit was hovering over the waters. Now the word hovering can also be translated brooding. Okay, so the idea, that particular word in Hebrew, right, gives the idea that the Holy Spirit was actually like a mother bird, all right, hovering over the waters. But Holy Spirit is not a bird, right? And so what happened is God's Spirit intervened and sparked life from the waters. And so that is a possibility that can kind of match with the concept of what scientists call a primordial soup, but it is the waters that got created. And from there, the Holy Spirit did the miracle of life. So we see not abiogenesis, that means life coming out of non-living matter, but creation. And the life force, or whatever you want to call it, okay, actually came from the Holy Spirit. So no life came out of the water by itself through evolving into anything. Life came about by intelligent creation of God's Spirit. So back to this table that you're familiar with, we looked at it last week, right? So who created? We know that the explosion of the universe out of nothing into existence through billions of years, we know that is not accurate or correct because it actually violates a lot of scientific facts. Yeah, like cause and effect and so on. It violates all those cause and effects. And these other points, life evolved from a pool of chemicals and by natural processes over millions of years from a common ancestor. We know that could not have been possible from the Miller's experiment. And so there's no billions of years and there's no life forms over millions of years at all. So all this is sorry, as we can see from science, whether logical science or proven science, it already shows that this is totally wrong. And the truth of the Bible stands. God created, right, all life, and it took 6 days of creation. Okay, so science, evolution versus creation. In general, okay, even though we have looked at how it is impossible, but still in general, evolution is accepted by many scientists as fact. Even up to today, there are those who know the Miller-Urey experiment was impossible. What life could not have come from the oceans, but now they're still exploring other places like pools of water here, puddles there, ponds. Okay, so they're still trying to find, but it's actually quite ridiculous if you cannot find it in such a huge ocean of the waters with all the minerals and etc. How to find it in little puddles, right? But scientists are diehards; they will not give up, trying to reject God. Okay, but by its very nature, evolution cannot be substantiated in the way that is usual in science by experiment and direct observation. In fact, when the Miller experiment they tried, they failed. Right? So other than that, it cannot be substantiated by science experiment. Neither Darwin nor any subsequent biologist has ever witnessed the evolution of one new species as it actually occurs. That's to say, nobody has actually seen how any life form evolved from one to another animal. The truth is that no theory of origins, evolution, or even special creation, or anything else can be scientifically proven. So our Bible also cannot be scientifically proven because we can't go back to that time and watch the Holy Spirit hovering over the waters and all that. Yeah, so Bible cannot be scientifically proven, but neither can evolution. So here's an interesting cartoon where there's this so-called teacher. Well, creation is a religion, and we don't teach religion in public schools. But everyone is entitled to hear about evolution. You see, so they kick out religion, but everybody should listen to evolution, right? And the student says, can we discuss all opinions and scientific evidence supporting creation? So what happens, this teacher says, is exactly the minds of people, not science. Yeah, it's not decided by science, but it's by humans. And you see their approach is not very scientific minded. Why? Because in science, they always talk about investigating. Correct? Science, they always talk about investigating. Why can you not investigate faith? Why can you not investigate creation? It's a miracle, true, but abiogenesis or evolution is also a miracle. So you put down one miracle in order to promote another miracle. You see how biased and unscientific you are, right? For all these people who call themselves scientists. So it's not science that is a problem, it's human beings. And the science behind creation is thrown out in the name of religion. As you can see here, we don't teach religion. And the wrong presupposition that faith is unscientific, right? Actually, faith is based on a lot of facts, and it's a different way of exploring facts from experiments and direct observation per se. So we see that people call evolution science and they call creation myth. Look at this book, The Science of Evolution and the Myth of Creationism. Know what's real and why it matters. You see, so they call it evolution is science, but creation is myth, fake. So this is where you see already they are prejudiced. The truth is many people do not give a fair investigation to creation. They have already made up their mind that creation is faith, myth, unscientific, and therefore untrue. But on the other hand, they paint the theory of evolution in broad strokes, like the article that we saw just now. Lightning could have done this and suddenly amino acids and all these produce life. They paint in very broad strokes. And it sounds possible, it sounds reasonable to us that this kind of thing can happen. It sounds plausible and real, but it's actually untrue in reality. When you actually go down to the nitty-gritty details, all right, they will give you all these jumps of logic and facts. Example, they use microevolution. Remember micro? Very small changes within the species where it's actually adaptation. Adaptation, right? Micro is very small. It's just adaptation to the conditions or to certain factors as a basis of change, but they use that and they make a big leap of logic and faith into macro evolution of species, where they say one animal type becomes another animal type. So they are very deceptive because all the small changes of different kinds of, let's say, mammals, yeah, they will tell you the mammal evolved into a into some other kind of animal, not a mammal anymore. So creation does not get a fair chance at being honestly investigated in the spirit of science. Yeah, you see that they look at science as they're already made up in their minds that science is the correct, evolution is the correct science. So science means knowledge, and by definition means that which we actually know concerning the facts of nature and their relationships. The very heart of the scientific method is the reproducibility of experiments, something that you can do again and again. It's a certain process is observed and measured. And then the experiment is conducted again the same way tomorrow, and it should yield the same results. That's the scientific method. In this way, experimental repetition and verification, okay? You repeat and then you verify or you prove it. A scientific description of the process is eventually developed. So you can write down step by step because you have done it, repeated it, and you have verified it. It's always the same. So you can describe the process. However, it is impossible to repeat the supposed evolutionary history of the world and life, since there were no human observers present to observe and record the supposed evolutionary changes of the past. Clearly, evolution in the broad sense cannot be proven by the scientific method. The theory of evolution is therefore not science at all. It is still a large degree of faith. But this is a fact that supporters of evolution will avoid and never admit. Yeah, they will blind their eyes and their minds and their hearts. Yeah, they don't see or hear the truth that they should. Okay, so we explore, we give it to them, we explore further on some of the other things that they say. And here's a very important premise, okay? To them it's scientific, but it's actually an assumption. So the basic assumption of evolution. Many scientists, not science, have assumed that the existing processes of the world are eternal processes. Okay, whatever is happening in the world is eternal, and therefore that they can explain everything that ever has been or ever will be in terms of what exists now. Okay, in other words, this is the philosophy of something called uniformitarianism. Uniform, uniform means the same, and is the ruling philosophy in the modern scientific establishment. It necessarily leads to evolutionism. By its logic, it will actually promote evolution, and that seeks to explain the origin and the development of all things in terms of present natural processes. Okay, so there's a picture here that says the theory that the geologic processes are the same today as they were in the past. What they mean is this, okay? If taking a look at this picture, 1 million years BC, this mountain was formed, right? And over 1 million years up to now, you will see that the change to the mountain is almost nothing. Almost nothing. Because why? Scientists say that the change of all these things on Earth take a lot of time. Okay, millions of years. So this mountain, it looks like this 1 million years ago. 1 million years later now, it will still look very similar, because for it to change according to this assumption of uniformitarianism, okay, the existing processes of the world are eternal. It takes a long time to change. So this principle of uniformitarianism actually came about from James Hutton in 1785, and he became known as the father of geology. That means the planet Earth, okay? Planet Earth, the rocks, yeah. So he was actually a Scottish farmer and scientist, and he studied rock formations in Scotland and England. What he was trying to do is answer questions like, how do mountains form? How is new rock created? And how old is the earth? And his observations led to the foundation of modern geology, the study of the earth, the materials of which earth is made, the structure of these materials, and the processes that act on them. So in the 1700s, he rejected the idea of catastrophism. That's the other term that contrasts, okay? We'll come to it after the slide. So he thought that the processes responsible for changing the landscape could also shape Earth's surface. So very slowly over time, you know, the look of the rocks and the mountains will change very slowly. And so he thought, for example, that erosion caused by streams, so the water of the stream will erode things, could also wear down mountains. But he realized that this would take a long time. For a stream to wear down mountain, it must take super long. It doesn't happen next year. And so he proposed that Earth was much older than a few thousand years. Yeah, there's this rivers, streams, okay, they will erode the mountain. So uniformitarianism in the philosophy of science assumes that the same natural laws and processes, whether it's physical, chemical, or biologic, all these operate in the universe now, and they have always operated in the universe in the past, and they apply everywhere in the universe. That's why the idea of evolving life from other life forms, it takes a long time. Okay, so whether human beings or chemicals or physical or whatever, or biology. So the methodology of uniformitarianism is frequently summarized as the present is the key to the past. That means what you see now is how you will be able to understand the past. What you see now, you can understand the past. Because this methodology holds that all things continue as they were, on and within the earth, with general uniformity in the same manner and with essentially the same intensity. So everything will be quite regular and consistent. But we know now climate change is accelerating a lot of stuff. But climate change, even though accelerating, can still be measured by science, right? So all this is essentially the same from the beginning of the world, and they are enough to account for all the changes on the planet, mountains and landforms. Here's something to bear in mind. Although they don't use this term much more nowadays, the principle originated by James Hutton is fundamental to geologic thinking. So people have not changed the way they think, and they still continue to apply. They still continue to apply this methodology, and they use it to look at the science of geology. So we have now two concepts. Catastrophism comes from the word catastrophe, which means disaster, versus uniformitarianism, which comes from the word uniform. That means everything has always been constantly the same. Okay, so catastrophism, before the 19th century, okay, that means 1801 to 1900, that is the 19th century. 1801 is 19th century. It was largely assumed by geologists that catastrophes like the Bible flood were responsible for the majority of the Earth's fossiliferous rock. Okay, so people used to believe that catastrophes caused a lot of all these formations on Earth. Then uniformitarianism came along around 1850, okay, started by James Hutton, and the non-catastrophic view of Earth's geology began to develop, which suggested that gradual processes and uniform intensities were instead responsible. So it is very interesting when we think about it, because God is actually using all these people, okay, over a process of time. God is using these people to come up with other ideas that can displace Bible truth, like catastrophes and teachings about God and miracles and stuff, so that these can be used side by side with God's truth and proven that they are wrong over time. And at the same time, God will prove himself, and with more discoveries of science, like what we have seen through archaeology, God will prove over time and this human discovery, the Bible truth stands, and all the different ideas that human beings come up with to try to reject God and pretend that God doesn't exist and so on, and God is not involved. All these ideas and lies by people will be proven false, so that they will have no excuse on the day of judgment, that they purposely rejected God, not because of proven fact, but proven fact contradicts them, and still they choose to reject God. Okay, so you can see that actually God, if you figure out all this, you see that God is giving mankind chance to find him. Yeah, even through science, when they are open-minded and honest to admit that their ideas are wrong, like the Baylor experiment. Your ideas are totally wrong. You should not continue in the wrong way, but turn to God. Okay, so catastrophism versus uniformitarianism. Example, is the Grand Canyon evidence of a catastrophe, that created all these canyons and mountains, or is it millions of years of erosion? So one last look at uniformitarianism before we actually put it to the test. So uniformitarianism is an assumption that the same natural laws and processes, things happening in the changes of the universe, they have always operated in the universe in the past and still apply everywhere in the universe now. So it refers to the invariance. That means there's no change in the metaphysical principles underpinning science, that there's a constant causal structure throughout space and time. Okay, whatever happens, it is constant. There's no sudden big disaster. Now, it is unprovable because it cannot be verified using the scientific method. Nobody has gone back to the past. So that's something that is a bit of a problem. And it's a key basis of virtually all fields of science. So all science principles assume that things are uniform in change. And in geology, the study of rock formations, landforms, mountains, and all these things, geology, uniformitarianism has included the concept that the present now is the key to the past. That means how slow or how fast things are changing now is a picture of the same thing in the past, very slow or very fast. Rates observed today have always occurred at the same rates. Okay, so it says many modern geologists no longer hold to a strict gradualism. So now they're trying to be flexible because they find that a lot of things happen more like what the Bible says rather than what science says, or rather than what people say. Okay, so let's let's investigate this concept, uniformitarianism or catastrophism. You can see all these mountain landforms. Yeah. Does it look to you like is one layer by layer slowly changing? Or is it a catastrophe that caused something like this? So marvelous. And so we look at the witness of Mount St. Helens. So we cannot go back to the past, yes, but we can have things happening today that give us an idea of the past, almost like what they say. Huh? So this is Mount St. Helens, and this is not what it actually looked like originally. Okay, take a listen to this. Okay, so this is Mount St. Helens one day before the devastating eruption. Look at the mountain. Okay, the view is from Johnston Ridge, 6 miles or 10 kilometers northwest of the volcano. This is a picture of from Johnston Ridge. Now, it was not originally named Johnston Ridge. Okay, they changed the name to Johnston Ridge, and you will know why later on. And this is the explosion. Okay, and then this is what it looks like now after the explosion. And this picture shows plumes of steam, gas, and ash, all right, often occurred at Mount St. Helens in the early 1980s. So this volcanic eruption that changed the whole mountain, right, took place on 18th of May, 1980. On clear days, they could be seen, all these things, huh? On clear days, they could be seen from Portland, Oregon, 80 kilometers to the south. And the plume photographed here rose nearly 910 meters above the volcano's rim. So this, believe it or not, is close to one kilometer. And the view is from Harris Ridge on May 19, 1982. So this photo was taken 2 years later after that volcanic eruption. Okay, so what happened here is a disaster, okay, that now gives us an idea that the geological time scale that we were looking at just now, you know, uniformitarianism, that principle or methodology is now being challenged, very strongly challenged, because the explosion of Mount St. Helens not only drastically changed the landscape of the Washington area in just a matter of months, it also dug deep holes in the idea that millions of years are needed for rock layer, canyon, and fossil formation, right? So now you see, God has allowed this disaster to happen in our lifetime to challenge what human beings do in coming up with ideas to reject God. Okay, coming up with the idea of uniformitarianism to say that God never sent a flood, all the fossils and mountain rocks and canyons, everything, they were formed very naturally, right? And they had nothing to do with God. And Mount St. Helens clearly testified that these things do not require long ages to form, which is to say, the world did not come about after millions and millions and millions of evolution. Okay, you can see from this one very special event in our lifetime that the world can be what it is today just over hundreds or even thousands of years, not millions. So take a listen to this video again. This one will, if you listen very carefully and observe, you will find a lot of information that links you to Noah's flood. Okay, link you to Noah's flood, gives us an understanding of something like Noah's flood, but happened in 1980. So pay close attention.
On May 18, 1980, Mount St. Helens, located 95 miles south of Seattle, Washington, erupted. The eruption was triggered by an earthquake centered beneath the mountain that measured 5.1 on the Richter scale. The lateral blast swept out the north side of Mount St. Helens at 300 miles per hour. With temperatures as high as 660 degrees Fahrenheit and the power of 24 megatons of thermal energy, it snapped 100-year-old trees like toothpicks and stripped them of their bark. Before the famous eruption at Mount St. Helens, scientists were mostly familiar with slow-acting examples of geologic change. But at Mount St. Helens, geologists watched the Earth's surface change quite rapidly. Icebergs were buried in hot avalanche material. They melted and formed badlands in days. Eruptions on May 18 and June 10 produced fine layers in hours. On June 10, mud flows cut zigzag canyons 100 feet deep in soft sand and mud, complete with perpendicular side canyons. Canyons that are reminiscent of the geography of Grand Canyon, only 40 times smaller and clearly produced within hours. Mud flows over the following decade cut hundreds of feet into solid rock in just days of cutting time. Fallen trees formed a log mat on the surface of Spirit Lake and dropped bark to the bottom of the lake, accumulating up to 3 feet of bark peat in just a couple years. And vertically floating logs sinking to the bottom of the lake resulted in buried trees in only a decade, similar to the trees of Yellowstone's fossil forest, which are also buried in volcanic layers. Even though Mount St. Helens is a very small catastrophe compared to the flood or the major catastrophes immediately following the flood, it provides a better clue to what happened in those times than the slow geologic processes which are most commonly seen in the present.
All right, so we have seen a video of how something catastrophic, almost similar to the Great Flood, could have changed the world, right? You can see a lot of devastation, you know, and you can see that kind of devastation on a small scale on Mount St. Helens. Imagine it on a global scale, how it will affect the whole world. So just one volcano, the eruption of Mount St. Helens was a rather small and localized event. Now, if a small explosion like this could cause such catastrophic results, you know, and it created small canyons, what could happen if there were larger explosions all over the globe? A study in catastrophe, Mount St. Helens has served as an object of study for creationist researchers who have learned about the effects of catastrophic geological processes and the speed at which the Earth can change. It can change very fast with just a catastrophe like Mount St. Helens in our lifetime. Okay, from radiometric dating to a study of sedimentary layers and erosion, the Mount St. Helens eruption offered a real-world laboratory. So what we get to witness is ancient truth, something like the flood seen in modern life science. So we are getting a little taste, right? And of something that happened in the Bible, but on a smaller scale. And yet it's good enough to show us a lot of things about the Bible story and truth. So the modern eruptive period. Okay, so what happened is before the actual volcanic eruption, just 2 months earlier, 16 March 1980, Mount St. Helens started experiencing earthquake activity. And then 11 days later, 27 March, they had several hundred earthquakes and the volcano erupted for the first time in over 100 years. And the initial steam blast created all these things, okay? A white crater. And earthquakes became more frequent, all right? With over 10,000 quakes occurring by 17 May. So the day before this major earthquake. By this time, the seismic movement had shifted enough land mass to create a bulge. Okay, so there's a swelling that grew to a consistent rate of about 2 meters per day. And this drastic deformation, also known as a cryptodome, indicated that magma is the lava that has not erupted. Okay, magma is the lava inside the mountain. So magma was bulging from below, so it's pushing up and waiting to erupt onto the surface on the 18th, the next day. So here's a map, the Cascade Volcanic Range where Mount St. Helens resides. And Mount St. Helens is here. You can see there are a few mountains quite nearby to each other. And this is all in Washington. So on 18 May, the next day, without immediate warning, a 5.1 magnitude earthquake shook the volcano at the north side. Okay, and the whole, if you saw the video, right, the whole chunk of the mountain just slid down like a landslide. And this landslide is now the largest debris avalanche in recorded history, about the size of 1 million Olympic swimming pools. Because the cryptodome was highly pressured, high temperature body of magma, its removal during the landslide caused a massive depressurization of the volcano's magnetic system, like opening a soda can after it has been shaken. So you imagine, you shake a bottle of Coke before you open, all comes up. Yeah. So what happens is a lateral blast, lateral means on the side, remove the upper 300 meters, nearly 1,000 feet of the cone. So the top, like the ice cream cone, the top 300 meters, sending hot material at least 480 kilometers per hour from the crater, and it flattened the dense forest as it traveled. So the forest was flattened. Just now you saw the tree, only the trunk left standing for some of them. The rest of all were destroyed. Okay, all were forced into Spirit Lake. Within 15 meters, an eruption cloud of tephra filled the sky at a height of more than 24 kilometers. The major loss in pressure resulted in the onset of a 9-hour-long Plinian eruption. So it's 9 hours. The new northward opening amphitheater shape was revealed shortly after the eruption ended. So everybody that's local, they were disappointed the perfect shape of the mountain was gone. It looks like a flattened souffle. You know, your souffle failed and it collapsed. Yeah. So in one day of eruption, 520 million tons of ash was distributed eastward across the United States. And the ash cloud circled the globe over the next 15 days. Do you remember an ash cloud in Singapore over the next 15 days? 1980. So here's a catastrophic classroom for us to remember before we look at some of the very useful things about Noah's Day. On 18 May, one of the most violent natural disasters unfolded in our modern time. The eruption of Mount St. Helens killed 57 people, caused $1 billion in damage, and demolished over 230 miles of property. Now, the important thing is the devastation of the eruption site gave creation scientists a real-world example of how quickly catastrophic processes reshape the earth, as well as how quickly wildlife can recover. You see, the animals can grow back, such as after the worldwide flood of Noah's Day. Even secular geologists who believe slow evolutionary processes shaped our world marveled at how quickly new geological features formed after the blast and how soon the environment returned to full health. Okay, so showing that what happened after Noah's Day is not impossible. It's actually very real. This calamitous event not only challenged the prevailing belief that many geological features require millions of years to form. You know, the mountains, the fossils, the rocks, all this, okay? But this event also provided explosive evidence to help us understand the cataclysmic power of the flood and the designs that helped plants and animals repopulate the earth. So a good picture of the earth after Noah's flood. So let's take a look at some of the things. Rapid cooling, right? It blasted pulverized rock and ash into the atmosphere, and the ash covered a portion of the globe. But evidence of the Earth's rock layers shows that many enormous volcanic eruptions occurred immediately and during Noah's flood. Okay, immediately after. Yeah, so Noah's flood also had a lot of volcanic eruptions. So if this comparatively small Mount St. Helens eruption lowered the Earth's temperature, multiple post-flood volcanic eruptions would have easily contributed to the rapid onset of the Ice Age. Okay, so the lowering of the temperature could have caused the Ice Age to set in. And here are some of the things that we can see. Okay, this greenish gray color is destroyed forests. Then the red one is pyroclastic flows from the mountain here. And then this orangey thing is the debris avalanche. And then the brown color is the mud flows. Okay, so you have numbers 2 and 3. Whereas to 2 and 3, you have rapid soil and animal recovery in these areas. Rapid canyon formation 4, so canyon formed because of the pyroclastic flows. 5, rapid layers, okay, so there were layers like your layers of the mountain. 6, new lava with old radiometric dates there. And 7, vertical floaters. You have the tree trunks in the lake, right? They are floating and some of them have sunk into the lake. So let's take a look, 2 and 3. Within a year, even the most devastated areas showed signs of life like gophers and bacteria, mixing the soil and restoring ecosystems. Just 1 year, small animals came back and bacteria. 10 years later, with vegetation growing back, many animal species returned to Mount St. Helens and repopulated the once sterile landscape. Just 10 years. Imagine Noah's flood, huh? 10 years later. Secular scientists marvel at the ability of living things to thrive in a once barren environment. So after Noah's flood, the world was barren, planet was barren, but living things could thrive. Similarly, after the flood, many creatures spread over the earth, churning the soil to prepare fertile areas for plants to grow and other animals to live. With its nutrient-rich sediments and abundance of water, the post-flood world presented unimaginable possibilities for life. Okay, so rapid Canyon formation. Number 4, geologists usually assign long time scales to the erosion of deep canyons. So they say the canyons take a long, long time. During and immediately after the flood, deep canyons could have formed very quickly, including the Grand Canyon of Arizona. The Mount St. Helens eruption showed that a rush of muddy water can quickly carve canyons even in hard rock. Yeah, water can carve canyons out of hard rock. During the global flood, rapid erosion processes would have happened on a much larger scale than we can imagine. And that's what happens throughout the world. Rapid layers. During the volcanic blast, landslides, mud flows, and falling ash produce a sequence of sediment layers up to 600 feet thick. This shows that sedimentary layers like the Khao Teng Kueh, okay, your layered cake, can form very rapidly by catastrophic flow processes, such as those during the Genesis flood. Okay, those slurries of volcanic ash and waterborne mud may have behaved a bit differently. The processes are basically the same. New lava with old radiometric dates. 1996, geologists sent a sample from a 1986 lava flow in the crater to be radiometrically dated. You know, they date. Though the rock had formed only 10 years earlier, the potassium-argon method dated it at 350,000 years old, and the minerals in it at up to 2.4 million years old. What does this show? Only 10 years ago, but they say, wow, hundreds of thousands and millions of years ago. 10 years ago only, you see? So their system is wrong, the dating is wrong, like we said in the very first lesson. Yeah, all those geologic layers that they came up with before radio dating, they copied that and applied it to their radio dating method. So totally wrong by, you see, hundreds of thousands of years and millions of years. Okay, this dating method, widely used by evolutionary geologists, is often highly inaccurate because it is based on faulty assumptions about conditions when and after the rock formed. These erroneous old dates that contradict the biblical time frame must be radically adjusted. Last one. Vertical floaters. When Mount St. Helens blew, the trees in surrounding forests broke like twigs, and many were dumped into Spirit Lake nearby. Some trees were buried in 3 feet of mud standing straight up. Yet, had secular geologists not witnessed this process, they could have misinterpreted these upright buried stumps as representing multiple forests that grew at different periods over many thousands of years. So you see, the trees only not very long, but they would have thought it was there thousands of years. And they misapplied this misinterpretation at other sites with petrified upright logs, like Specimen Ridge in Yellowstone National Park. Okay, I think I'm out of time, but this is, oh, okay, I have 2 more minutes. So here are 7 wonders of Mount St. Helens. Okay, 7 geological features resulting from this eruptive activity. Because they were formed rapidly, they challenge evolutionary thought, which says long ages to form these things. We call them wonders because of the awe they produce. In fact, it is our persuasion that these wonders are a message from God to remind men of the speed in which he created the world. God can create in 6 days and rest on the 7th day. So take a look at the 7 wonders. What happened? I don't have time to go beyond these 7 quick points. That one will be next session, next year. Number 1, mountains rearranged beyond recognition in 9 hours. Okay, so imagine Noah's flood over the whole planet. Canyons formed in 5 months. So the whole planet with Noah's flood can form canyons. Badlands formed in 5 days. Layered strata formed in 3 hours. You know, the layers that we see on the mountains, layered strata, 3 hours only. River systems formed in 9 hours. Sinking logs that look like aged forests in just 10 years. And a new model for quicker coal formation. Let's talk about fossils, right? So all these we will look at next session, which will be in January. Here's a picture, a quick one, and we'll go through it again next year, right? Canyons, very fast. Many layers are formed rapidly, see? Stratification, all the layers. And then you can compare the layers of Sand Mountains with the Great Flood, layers of the Grand Canyon. So Grand Canyon didn't have to take millions and millions of years. It can happen very fast. Okay, we will stop here and take time to admire it next lesson. All right, shall we pray? Heavenly Father, we thank you, Lord, for your love once again. We thank you, God, that you provide us a lot of things to tell us that you are real and that we should not be stubborn like people who allow themselves to be blinded because they have issues with faith, they have issues with life, they have issues with you. Help us, O Father, Lord, to grow in our understanding and our conviction so that we can be your representatives and speak the truth so that those who are willing, Lord, to learn your truth and to come to you will have the chance to do so. We give you thanks and praise for all this in Jesus' name. Amen.